When the mysteries were celebrated in ancient Egypt, there was an evil spirit called Typhon, or Set, who brought about the death of the god Osiris. It is the red Set that has given us our concept of the devil. But Set was nothing but the material world, the ground of man's temptation, and also the environment in which he gains immortality through discipline. Therefore, Set, or Satan, is divine opportunity, the world into which we come in ignorance, but from which we depart in wisdom.
We start at the beginning. Who was Kronos?
Yeah.
So, according to the Greeks, Kronos was, well, he was really the second god. He wasn't the first one. Uranus, or
Uranus?
Uranus and Gaia were the first gods in Greek. And
Gaia.
Then Gaia. And then his son was Kronos. But it's so weird how they castrate their fathers.
Yeah.
And the whole idea behind all that, well, Kronos castrates his father, then Zeus castrates Kronos. But the whole idea of that is evolution. That the concept that the son and the children are more advanced than the father, so the father has to disappear, in a sense that Kronos, time disappears everything. You know, time kills everything. And they call it the Grim Reaper, but that's time.
Yeah.
But what people misunderstand, you know, when you get into the whole idea, what David Icke and everybody else is talking about, is that they look at Kronos as something evil in the sense that he's eating little children, and they misinterpret the myth in the sense that it's really time that's eating everything. But the other part of it is Kronos represents matter, physical matter, so that what's ever incorporated, the spirit gets incorporated into physical matter, and it's like being eaten up by it.
So it's a metaphor, and it's not supposed to be taken literally.
All myths are metaphors. Nothing should be taken literally.
And so all of these gods are representations of planets, certain planets?
Well, they're attached. The energies of the planets are attached. They're created gods. You know, in the minds, because they believed in animism, which is everything in the world is live, and it has a spirit and it has a soul, and if it has a soul, it's conscious, so it means it has a personality, and the personality is attached to certain characteristics. Like Mars is aggressive. It's the god of war.
Right.
Venus is the god of love. Saturn is the god of materialism. The sun is the god of spirit, divine, you know, consciousness, and the universe is represented by the sun.
Thank you all for joining us today. I got here on my left Joseph Alexander. My name is Avtar Simrit, and today we're going to be talking about the ancient Saturn myths and some of its misconceptions and the actuality of what was really implied by the ancients and what they came up with through their mythology. Joseph?
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot to it, and there's a lot of misconceptions, because basically nobody has really studied religion. They all stick to one concept of either Judeo-Christianity or Buddhism, whatever it is. It's only at this time in our century that all the religions have been put together. I mean, think about 1,000 years ago. You couldn't go to all these different places. And so many libraries have been destroyed. Instead of just looking at the myths from one level of interpretation, there's 3 levels. There's one, the celestial level, which happens in the sky. based on astrology. That's the first level I call celestial. The second level is on a personal basis, your personal salvation, and about how your soul reincarnates and becomes. This is according to the ancients.
Right.
I'm not talking about Christianity or anything else because they don't believe in reincarnation. Then on the third level is terrestrial, which is on the earth. So all the symbols can be interpreted on 3 different levels. And as the ancients said, as above, so below. So everything resonates. So if you have the sun, say there's 3 or 4 main symbols in all the myths. One is the serpent, the sun, the tree, and being reborn or dying and resurrecting. And all those have to do with the cycles of becoming, the cycles of evolution. On the celestial level, that has to do with the cycles of the sun, the planets. There's a yearly cycle where the sun goes through the 12 signs of the zodiac.
So they get confused by it.
Yeah.
And they're not connecting the dots.
Well, it's like three-dimensional chess.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. They're playing checkers and like Spock's playing 3-dimensional chess.
Right. Exactly.
They just don't get it. At least from my point of view. Then on the human cycle, the same thing. But they look at it as the human soul reincarnating through the 12 signs of the zodiac.
Got it. Okay.
And then on the earth level, it's as the sun goes through the 12 signs, you have the 4 seasons.
Okay.
And so when they write the myths in ancient times, everybody gets those 3 planes mixed up. And like Fraser says, everything, James Fraser, who wrote, tried to interpret myths, everything was from the terrestrial level. And then you have other people who they don't see anything on the soul level. They have no idea that a lot of these myths relate to the human soul and reincarnation. Because basically, all the ancient libraries were destroyed. But if we're going to interpret them, you have to understand what the Greeks and the Egyptians and the Persians, they all believed in reincarnation. So they thought of the soul in the same terms as the sun going through the 12 signs of the zodiac. Instead, your soul reincarnates through each sign. And then you develop your consciousness. But if you follow, you're in resonance with what happens in the sky, like it's born in Virgo. Well, the whole idea of that, the sun is born, at the winter solstice. Like all the gods are born at the winter solstice. They die and they come. That whole idea is that basically you're reincarnating through them. But the whole idea of Virgo is that you're sublimating your sexual energy. And they have a lot of those concepts in, like, as one how would you say it? Say like Kronos is castrated and Uranus is castrated. That's the whole concept of one cycle ending and another one beginning. And they're basically, it's like they're losing their energy, the previous cycle, and it goes into the next cycle. And that's what they mean by you can see that as sublimation. But on a personal level, in your body level, I mean, the Hindus and all of them talk about chastity. They talk about recirculating your sexual energy. And that's the serpent. The serpent is, here's material world and here's the spiritual world. Here's your bottom chakra and your highest chakra. To get from one to the other, it moves in a spiral. Because all the elements, each of the 4 elements that they believed in, earth, water, fire, air, which is material world, the liquids, all liquids, and then there's all gases, and then there's the ethers, which is fire, is the highest, which is like nuclear plasma, and plasma, which is a lot of ancients said that was the highest form, highest element. Everything is made from that.
Huh.
So we're talking on the celestial level.
Okay.
So the very first gods were the earth god Gaia, and Uranus. It's really O-U-R.
Okay.
And so the sky god Uranus and Gaia, they had children. They were the Titans. They always talk about the gigantic, gigantic beings, the giants in the ancient times.
The Titans.
Yeah, they were the Titans, but they were like, this even further. I mean, they're like size of mountains.
Oh, okay.
That sort of thing. And the whole idea behind all these, before I get back to this, is that everything starts off very gross, very unrefined.
Yeah.
And each cycle gets more and more refined. But the last cycle dies, and then it's reborn again.
Okay.
So all the myths talk about the god is jealous of his children because his children may replace him and dethrone him. So what Uranus did, his children, he hated them because they were ugly and they were like the Cyclops.
Okay.
And so he put them down into Hades. Well, actually it was called Tartarus.
Okay.
Gaia was just hated that he treated her children like that. She was so, his wife was so upset with that. She gave one of their sons, Kronos, it was a sickle, and he castrated his father. And that's the whole castration, is the whole idea of
so Kronos castrated Uranus or Uranus?
He castrated him. And then he became the god of the Titans. Later on, he freed everybody, you know, all his brothers and sisters that were in Tartarus. And the Cyclops and other ones gave him powers for doing that.
Okay. So Kronos castrated
Uranus. Yeah,
whatever,
and basically his phallus fell into the ocean, and out of the white foam, Aphrodite was born, the most beautiful goddess. And in the Saturn, Aphrodite is Venus.
Oh,
you
yeah.
See the picture of Botticelli, of Venus on the
half shell, right.
coming through the foam. That was the whole idea. But the idea behind that was their energy is sublimated into the next generation.
Okay.
But the gods are always angry, the original gods.
Yeah.
Well, the same thing happens again. Kronos, it's predicted that his sons and daughters with Rhea, his wife Rhea, would overthrow him. So he does the same thing. He swallows all of his children, one after another. Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, Hestia, and Zeus. Well, when they get to Zeus, the god Metis helps him to escape. They put Zeus in a swaddling clothes, and instead Kronos swallows the rock, the stone that's in, and thinking it's Zeus. And so what happens later on, when Zeus is brought up, Hermes takes him to Crete, and he grows up in a cave, and he's protected by, I think it's called the Corbinites. They would take shields and bang them and make all this loud noise to keep Kronos from finding Zeus. And it's really interesting because that means something else. So Zeus comes back, and he does the same thing that Kronos did to his father. He castrates. Well, first what happens is Metis gave Kronos this sort of drink, and he threw up all his children.
So they got resurrected.
Yeah, basically they weren't. You know, they always show pictures of Kronos eating his children. But those pictures are painted in 1800s. We're talking a myth that was 2,500 years ago. So they got the whole, you know, if they had, you know, 3 paintings in a row. You know, they eat him, then he comes back up. Because it's not the whole myth. Whole idea of cycles of one generation dying out and the next more advanced
Right.
is growing. It's evolution.
Exactly.
They're talking about
So
evolution.
that's what it symbolizes.
So Saturn represented the first cycle of materialism.
Okay.
So, like in alchemy, there's the 7 metals, and lead, or the gray wolf, is representative of Saturn. It's the first metal developed, so it's the most corrupt, and it's the deepest form of materialism. And as it goes higher, it goes to Jupiter, then Mars, and each one is more purified until it gets to the sun, which is completely the highest form of consciousness in our universe.
Okay.
Well, in our solar system.
Yeah.
That we can see.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it starts at Saturn, and the Saturn is a form of consciousness. God is everywhere, and if he wasn't, then the thing, whatever it was, it couldn't exist.
Yeah.
Because we're all connected.
So the point is that God is in the material world, you know, and you cannot separate God from the material world, or vice versa.
He didn't, like, it didn't take 6 days and he,
Yeah, right, exactly.
he took off to the Bahamas and
exactly.
drinking Mai Tais on Sunday. No.
So Saturn represents the lowest form of materialism and where matter starts, but the divinity, the consciousness of God, it comes out of that.
Comes out of Saturn.
Yes.
So
toward a higher level.
Right. The next higher is Jupiter, so it like expands.
Yeah.
The next one is Mars, which is iron. Then the Earth, and then after that, there's Venus. Then Mercury.
Right.
Venus represents copper. Mercury's quicksilver, and the sun is gold. And like gold is indestructible. It never changes. It's the purest form of metal.
Right.
So the alchemist believed that we would evolve that same way because we're made of the earth.
Saturn represents
the lowest material. It's the lowest, but it's also the beginning.
Yes.
It's the beginning of spirit coming into matter.
Okay.
So that's how come they called it the Golden Age.
Okay.
Because the sun came down into matter. It lost itself.
Okay.
And it forgot what it was, and then had to go circle back up on the next round of evolution.
Right.
And that's the whole idea of Kundalini going upward.
Okay.
Opening up your top chakra, coming back down into matter. And it keeps cycling. It never repeats itself. We're a spiral that doesn't repeat.
That's true.
It's not like here's a cycle, then here's another cycle, and here's another one. You learn one cycle. It's like going to school. You don't forget what you learned in kindergarten when you get to first grade or second. You just go up to high school, then college, then real life. That's how reincarnation is. Right. You don't go back and relearn what we learned in other reincarnations. Right. Supposedly we started off as the whole universe, and it condensed down into the elements. Elements condensed down into the minerals, and animals. Then we're still in animal world, and we're going up into higher world.
Yeah. So Saturn represents the beginning of matter in the gross material world, and lead, right? Right. And it was anthropomorphized in Greek mythology as Kronos.
The beginning of time. that is the time relates to the cycles.
Okay.
So the evolution also goes through the lowest chakra, which is Kronos,
Yeah.
to the highest, which is the sun.
Got it. Okay.
So when he eats, the whole idea of eating them also means that the spirit's coming into matter.
Okay.
So Kronos eats the sun.
Yeah.
And you look in alchemy, you have pictures of the wolf eating the sun. Now in alchemy, the gray wolf represents Kronos. And in alchemical distillations and the great work, it starts off with lead.
Okay.
Starts off with lead ore. And then eventually they put gold and silver in there, and it's supposed to purify it. And
So then where did this whole idea of Saturn worship, and then it got appropriated into Satan worship? How did that whole thing propagate?
Well, that's historical,
Okay.
in the sense that once Christianity and Judeo-Christianity came over, it's like all of them. They destroyed the Library of Alexandria, the Library of Apollo. They destroyed all the knowledge. I mean, there was like 6 books on Mithraism, and everything is just burned. The main concepts of gods came from India. There's a lot of information how you can, like, even Zeus is the same god as Indra.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah, with the thunderbolts. Greece. Well, for one thing, the Earth is not 4,000 years old. I mean, you're talking 10, 20,000 years ago that they had a Vedic civilization that went around the whole world.
Right.
And these were a lot of these concepts came from.
Right.
But over time, because of destruction and because of we go through the cycles, we start off with the highest cycle and go back down to the lowest, that the knowledge is lost. So the Greeks lost the understanding of the symbolism. Even though they had the mystery religions, they used to initiate people into the real truth behind them. Well, just like now, they get into the very intellectual philosophy part. And they don't have a subjective concept of what symbols mean.
So there's no reason to think that the energy of Saturn is some evil, malevolent force.
Well, without the evil Saturn. Without the material world, we wouldn't exist. I mean, God made the material world. There's nothing bad about it. And the whole idea that we have to run away is the kingdom of heaven is within inside you. That means if you could bring the spirit down inside you, you'll be in the bliss all the time. You know your immortality. You know that you'll be immortal.
And you bring that down into the material world. You know, because it's like the energy from the lowest point, which is Saturn, your bottom chakra, gets more and more refined as you go up toward the sun. Or the top chakra, and then you attain that wisdom or that knowledge, whatever, and then descend back down in order to bring it and purify the whole material realm.
And the other part is that everything in this material world is unique. So that's the big. It's individual. I'm individual, you're individual. Each nation is individual. Each person, each blade of grass, each snowflake. All is individual. And that adds to the complexity of the universe. And it adds to the bliss of God, you might say. It adds to everything. So the whole idea, see, there's the deepest urge everybody has is to experience that oneness. But without spirituality of finding it in yourself, people try to have that oneness by taking away the individuality of the other person. You know, it's the old, basically communist idea. Everybody wears, we'll all be one, but they all want to be their one.
Because there's a
black
difference.
Pajamas and working. And
there's a difference between oneness and sameness.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. They want everybody to be the same.
Yeah.
And that's how come this whole multicultural concept. It's an urge from coming to everybody to be who they are.
Right.
But at the same time, you can't push that on others. You have to basically have freedom to be who you are.
That's
I mean,
the whole
who
thing
you're
about,
becoming.
Yeah, that's the whole thing about free will.
And that's done through consciousness. It can't be done by forcing somebody to be who you think they should be.
Right.
That all this technology has civilization has thrown us off from living the right life and being happy in nature.
Yeah.
Because I mean, the water would be entirely pure, the air would be pure.
Right.
We'd have be very fertile, and I mean, for thousands of years, people lived on small farms, maybe millions of years.
Yeah.
And they survived. Now, the further you get away from nature, what happens? There's a law that you lose your fertility.
Yeah.
And if you look at our civilization, like 60% of the sperm count has dropped.
Yeah.
It's dropped 60%. And women are having a hard time having children.
Right.
That's because there's a certain spiral, however you want to call it. We'll have to get into that later. If you don't follow that spiral energy, the vortex, you know, Schoberger talks about how the river's vortex, and then that creates more water.
Okay.
That's come, we're losing our water, we're losing the air, all that. Because the vortex really is another symbol of the serpent. So after fire, after you're purified by fire, which is within inside you, which is Agni, which is, they call it the serpent fire, which is in your lower chakra, which is Saturn, that when that awakens, you see this great light inside you, they call it becoming going into samadhi or higher consciousness. Then you find, you realize that you're connected with everything, and you know, a lot of people who have these near-death experiences, that's what happens. The Kundalini rises, and it hits the center of the brain, and between, I mean, there's all these technical things, but basically it changes their life because they find out that they're immortal.
Right.
But the Kundalini is always working in everybody. It's not just like in certain people.
Yeah.
It's a part of your energy system.
Right.
It's always keeping us, it's evolving us very slowly, but you can also move quicker if you do yoga and eat right and keep your mind on higher spirit.
Yep.
So when they have these near-death experiences, a lot of people report that they've seen this great light or this tunnel. And the whole idea is that's enlightenment.
Yeah.
And they, in the ancient days, they called them Illuminati.
Yeah.
And that there was a positive to that.
Yeah. The ones who bring light into the world.
Right. Well, the negative side is they always take it and they twist it and turn it upside down, the mirror image. They took the concepts of Kundalini and turned it into the devil. See?
Yeah.
And so they want to keep everybody ignorant of the true nature of themselves.
Right.
Because we're immortal.
Yep.
Our minds are immortal. And so there's a lot of secret knowledge to Kundalini and mind control. But by placing it next to everything that's, I mean, it is dangerous, but they keep it to control people.
Right.
They keep that knowledge away, and they've done a good job.
Well, the reason it's dangerous is because, you know, once you're awakened, then you can't be controlled.
Yeah, that's true too. But they made it into a science.
Right.
Of mind control. And a lot of it has to do with sexual abuse, raising the Kundalini, programming your brain to be different personalities.
Right.
And that's a whole nother subject.
So that's like the shadow side of materialism of Saturn, would you say?
Yeah. See, the whole thing is everything you discover you can use it for a good side or a bad side. We have free will.
Right.
And I mean, you can use nuclear power to destroy a nation. I mean, if you believe in that.
Right.
Or you can use it for nuclear medicine or whatever.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, any discovery. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
And there's tremendous amount of discoveries within ourselves that for the last 2,000 years, it's been demonized.
Yeah.
And if you go back to the whole thing really started with the Romans for the last 2,000 years. And they destroyed it all, and they were one civilization that destroyed the previous. They destroyed Greece.
Right.
The Hellenistic civilization went for thousands of years. Yeah.
Is it, because...
Well, I mean...
Where did this misinterpretation
in a roundabout
come
way,
from?
I mean, they
because if you demonize the material world and you think the body is evil, then obviously you're going to equate Saturn with being evil because you think that the body is evil.
Well, philosophically, if you go back to Christianity, they destroyed the Hellenic civilization. I mean, Emperor Theodosius II, like 600, basically any Greek citizen couldn't work for the Roman Empire, or if they had a pagan statue, they could be pain of death.
Right.
So I mean, it was just outlawed, and the libraries, all the libraries were destroyed. Not to mention libraries in India. So there's a library of Apollo that had thousands of books, Alexandria. So they basically took over the ideas that were pagan, and they put their own concepts into it. So they're really not. Christ actually was teaching Kundalini.
Oh yeah, exactly.
mean,
See, when I say Christianity, I'm not talking anything about Jesus's real teachings. I'm talking about modern,
But that has, for the last 2,000 years, they still have that same attitude.
Right.
That the physical world is evil.
Yes.
And so they project that. They accept what this group of kings, like the myth, the kings and queens want to stop everybody from having power.
Right.
Well, even in every fairy tale, there's just the wicked queen who wants to kill Snow White and the wicked stepmother, and on and on and on. That just means...
So that's just like in the myths where the father, eats up their children, and because they're resisting the progressive, of evolution.
And
so the Romans conquered the Greeks and misinterpreted all of their myths.
Well, I think it's more... Well, you can't expect generals to be spiritual people.
That's true.
I mean... The same thing happened in India. When the Muslims took over, they had a library with 9 million volumes that was burned to the ground because it didn't coincide with the Quran.
Right.
Exactly. So it just happens over and over, but the truth keeps coming back because that's part of who we are. Yeah. So getting back to it, the word demon came from Damien.
Oh yeah.
The Greeks used to say they had their daemons who would help them, inspire them, and give them creativity and everything. And they just changed it.
Right.
And there's a lot of words like that. The idea about this lifestyle is that you have to live close to nature. You have to be kind and humble, and just have enough to, enjoy the natural things in life, not all this artificial.
Right.
But what happens if people run after power and prestige and after pleasures beyond a certain limit? That passes on to their children, their children's children.
Right.
And their brains deteriorate. In fact, especially if you're throwing all your sexual energy out. And at the same time you're trying to become to higher level of consciousness. It's just you have to be aware of it. But it really does affect people's minds. And they become what I put down as anti-divine.
Okay.
They're not evil. They enjoy causing pain.
Okay.
They enjoy it's sort of like, how would you call it? It's a law of nature saying that these people are not going to reproduce so that we have a billion evil kings and queens who like to eat children. They're saying, no, that's what happens. You know, they end up killing their own children, and that's the law of nature, because they're not supposed to, they don't expand. Because they don't have, expansion is love. It's like, it's like the 4 seasons, you know, summer, spring, all that. The only season that's bad is not even bad, it's just the purpose. So there's already there's laws written into our DNA that evil destroys itself. And it doesn't reproduce. You can only eat what's, it's like a toxin.
It's nature taking care of itself.
Well, like, like you have a cold or whatever, and all this bacteria, that bacteria is there to eat up all the toxins. It didn't cause the cold. It's the terrain of your body that caused it. You know, if you're drinking or ate a bunch of wrong things, or you're just in a depleted situation, it's all the terrain. Well, it's the same with our civilization. It's the terrain. You know, if you're watching slasher movies and you're sitting taking cocaine and
taking cocaine while you're watching slasher movies.
It's the terrain, man.
It's true. But like, so what you're saying is like, because naturally we're wired, and nature and evolution is to go toward expansion and progress. Right? So if there's things in nature that are anti-progress, anti-evolution, then they will just naturally get eliminated.
They have to be on a spiral of becoming more and more unique and more individual, but at the same time going inward and seeing the unity of everything. See what even our civilization now is, they want you to be collective, but they want to strip you of your identity. And they don't know how. It's sort of like, okay, everybody wear black pajamas and work in the fields together. I mean, how is that multicultural? No, it's people projecting their idea of oneness onto everybody else, but they do it by stripping the other person of their individuality.
When in reality it should be the opposite, you know, because it's like each individual soul is an individualized version of God. But even though we're all part of the oneness, but each one individualized is a unique aspect of that one.
And that adds to the whole unity of the universe. I mean, look around. Every blade of grass is different. Every tree is different. You ever see a tree like twins? It is same branches. It's impossible.
That's why there's a big difference. I was just thinking this, between oneness and sameness. It's a big difference. But some people get it confused.
And they think equality is not really natural.
No, it's not.
Because it's basically natural world. Everything is unequal. And why should I get a scholarship to become like the best basketball player in the world? I'm only 5'7".
It's
sort of stupid. I'd rather have an art scholarship.
Because if every individual was the same, instead of, you know, oneness, we had sameness, then there'd be no expansion and no growth.
Well, part of it is because our society is so outward oriented, and we've lost, well, the other things, you know, the higher consciousness. So the brain is evolving, but what is it evolving to? It's called enlightenment, higher consciousness. It's a plane of awareness where everything is one, just the way it is. But that's a whole nother field that we have to talk hours on. Because
it's another video.
Gopi, Krishna, and Aurobindo were enlightened individuals. That means their body has actually went through a transformation. And their brain has changed. And when they close their eyes, when most people close their eyes, they see black. You know, you meditate and it's black. Well, when you reach a certain stage, you close your eyes and you start to see, at least for me, it was like clouds and different things passing by. Like you're looking at a screen. Then I went through a period where there's like a white phase, where everything was just like there's a white sort of liquid on top of everything. That sort of passed. And then that's as far as I got. But then there's other people, the next highest state is like the red, but really gold color.
Yeah.
That's the highest state of consciousness.
Because I get
Aurobindo talks about
I get
that.
the red a lot. I see
Yeah.
red a lot when I meditate.
What Gopa Krishna talked about, just, it was so fascinating. He'd just sit and have his eyes closed, and, or even eyes open, and he could feel this consciousness coming in and out like a breathing awareness.
Right. Oscillating, yeah.
He's like one with the, you can't explain how fantastic it is.
Yeah.
And that's what's pushing people, because it's a biological. It's not when people say all these religious people are, well, basically it's like saying somebody's artistic. You say, oh, that person's artistic, what kind of nut is he?
Yeah, right?
Well, he was born that way.
Yeah.
The whole human race is born this way to go get to
Right.
the next higher state of consciousness.
Exactly.
And that's what's behind religion. There's nothing wrong with religion. It's just like the baby steps of humanity,
Right.
crawling on their hands and feet.
Yeah.
It starts from the gross and it gets more and more refined.
Yeah.
And we're at the point where religions are just going to fall apart.
Yep.
And then they're going to start to understand the real science and religion are going to meet together.
Yep.
Because you can have an actual scientific study and see how people's bodies change
Right.
when Kundalini is raised.
Mm.
And not just that, they have gifts that they're giving, like they can read different learn different languages.
Right.
They have artistic talents. It's nothing like a drug experience. Forget all about all that. When you get to higher consciousness, it's permanent.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, if somebody took LSD and it became permanent, they'd be in an insane asylum.
Yes, that's.
And most people take drugs. It depletes their pranic energy, and basically they become, a lot of them turn into they're filled with, in the jails with the drug addicts.
Yeah.
You know, they do all sorts of crazy things on, whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, that's because, like you were saying, it's not a permanent change in your consciousness.
And you can't cheat God.
Exactly.
Like all these people, I'm going to take a pill.
It's like a shortcut. It's like you're playing a video game and you put in a cheat code.
Yeah.
You know?
You're playing a pinball game and you take a magnet.
Right. Exactly. So in conclusion, we would say, that Saturn, isn't something that people should be afraid of, and people are propagating this propaganda about it being Satan, or like Satan worship, and like you were mentioning another time about there was no evidence of no temples to Kronos in Greece.
Yeah, that's true. They have a temple to Athena, which is the Parthenon, the greatest one. Temple to Zeus, which the Germans basically took, and it's in Germany. And they took the friezes from the Parthenon. It's in Britain. Yeah. So they basically just stripped Greece, and just look at it now. It's really on a psychological level. Yeah. They don't want this knowledge to come out again. Exactly. Because we've got our form of government from Plato, Republic. He went through all the different forms. Without that, we would still be under kings and queens, and they're still trying to control us. But there was no sacrifices to Kronos. There was no temples to him that I can find. Right. And as far as the other religions, like Samaria, and they all had their own idea of this. Yeah. And there was human sacrifice, but you're talking so far into history, nobody can really tell how many people and at what time. I mean, it could be 5, 10, 15,000 years ago. Yeah. See, the first Greek god of Athens, or Attica they call it, his name was Cyropes. Cyropes. Okay. And the first thing he did was stop animal sacrifice. They used to sacrifice a bull to Zeus. Right. He says, no, that's not good anymore. And you're talking 500, 600 BC. Says you're going to sacrifice a piece of bread that's shaped like a ball. Oh. Yeah. That's brilliant. Yeah, that's like the mass. And so that's where it started 500 years before they're talking about all these other human sacrifices. Yeah. But if you really want to know what's going on with evil, you don't have to look 5,000 years ago. Just look at our last 100 years. I mean, this is what I really dislike about that, where all these people are trying to project, you know, not their evilness, but their ignorance onto another civilization that gave us our way, you know, our sense of beauty, the Hippocrates oath, geometry. Look at our way of government. Nobody's changed it 2,500 years.
Right.
Nobody's come up with something better than the Republic. And all they do is they see all those people as devil worshippers. It's ridiculous.
So you don't think there's any basis for that? Do you think that it's a lot of, you know, fear propagation?
Let me put this. They don't want to look at their own shadow.
Yep.
The death cult is America. It's
that's true.
I mean, to America, Russia, you name it. Germany. The whole thing is world evolving, and no matter what, they can't control us.
Right.
Because
exactly.
There's an energy working within us. It's like a seed. You put a seed in the ground.
Yeah.
7 years later, you get an apple tree. Then it blooms.
Yeah.
We're seeded. And it's not. There's no accident here.
Exactly.
I mean.
Yep. And if you're not,
what I was talking about.
Well, I mean, if you're not afraid of the material world, and you don't have the idea programmed in your head that your physical essence is, you know, evil or something to be afraid of, then nobody can control you with that fear. It's only if you buy into that, you know, that there's some giant force of some planet with rings around it that's gonna, you know, come in to eat you.
The whole idea that that's artificial, the rings are artificial, or any of that is just pure conjecture.
Right.
It's just imagination.
Exactly.
But I was going to say about the Illuminati and all their concepts going through the ages of them sacrificing children.
Right.
I mean, there was sacrifice.
Yeah.
But in Greece, like I said, there was no proof that they had child sacrifice.
Right.
I mean, and especially with Kronos. I mean, there was no temple to Kronos.
Yeah.
You can't find one. There's in any event, but there are temples to Saturn in Rome, because Rome was a little bit of a corrupt civilization.
But in Greek society, there's no evidence of any, you know, child sacrifice
that I can find. No.
Exactly.
But in other civilizations, you go to Samaria. I don't know if there's any in there, but like El and Palestine. Right. And the Phoenicians were known to sacrifice children. The Aztecs, obviously. That has to do more with evolution. When the brain gets under stress, the mind turns to God, and they think they have to give something, appease it.
Yeah, exactly.
But the whole idea of sacrificing, in a way, it's evolutionary, because it goes to castrating the god before you, the one before you, because they think this death will help the next cycle. Right. But it's corrupted. Yeah. We're going to evolve out of that. We have evolved out of that. Exactly. And if there's people who still do that, like they say the Illuminati still do that, it's not because of the myth. Yeah. It's because they're living the wrong lifestyle. Yeah. And all through the myth, they talk about the kings and queens and how they, like Little Red Riding Hood. Well, not so much.
But those people are not the real Illuminati. They've just appropriated the word Illuminati because they want you to be afraid of them.
People after power and prestige and money. It goes against our DNA, basically. Yeah. And their minds become corrupt. I wouldn't doubt if they had holes in the brain. Oh yeah. Yeah. And from eating flesh and everything else. It's gross, but
it's true.
I don't even want to mention it. Yeah. But the whole idea that started from basically I was going to say. Yeah.
And I feel like it was filtered through limited understanding, you know, a long time ago, you know, because if we were, you know, a less evolved species, you know, and we were at the mercy of, say, the elements or nature or storms or something, then our minds would, you know, go to anthropomorphize that and say, oh, there's this devil figure that's punishing us, or you know, something,
Right.
when it's really just weather. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's learning how to live with nature,
Mm-hmm.
which we haven't yet.
Exactly.
And so,
You know, and I feel like that programming is still, we're evolving out of that programming, but that programming's, you know, still in some people who are still, you know, they think at that level.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I think that, you know,
Well, even the conspiracy level, everything that's out in nature's some sort of other being did it.
right,
Like the moon was pulled here by some spaceship.
right.
You know, that's sort of crazy. Or the rings, some aliens making these rings.
Yeah.
They may be taking advantage of the materialistic properties of Saturn,
Right,
but that's beside the point.
right,
That's just what it is.
right.
And, just like Jupiter's expansion,
Yeah,
and Mars is a sexual force, and Venus is a feminine
Right.
force.
Uh-huh.
That's just what these planets are. Every material object has an energy to it,
right.
just like every human has a personality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but what it comes down to though still is free will and free choice. You know, it's like,
Well, development and how some people, if you're not developed enough, how can you have a free will if you don't even know there's another
Right.
opportunity to be
exactly
something than what you are?
Yeah.
But
Because people think sometimes that they're like victims of their astrology or something, you know?
yeah,
And it's like,
You're right.
no, you have a choice, you know? It's like, oh, you know, my sign is this, or, you know, this
or
planet.
Saturn is doing this to us.
Exactly.
I always think it's nothing but bad astrology when you blame it on Saturn, because look,
Yeah. Or Mercury retrograde.
yeah, or I mean, there is energy and it's causing these things,
Uh-huh.
but you can't blame it on them.
Exactly.
Like, look, the whole idea of, you know, blaming Saturn
Yeah.
or Kronos, or all this other thing. Look at our civilization in the last 100 years. 130 million people have been killed.
Yeah.
There's like 50 million Chinese were killed the revolution. Something like 20 or 40 million. I mean, it's outrageous. 6 million Ukraine, 6 million Jewish
Yeah.
people.
Because I feel like that kind of thing is taking, you know, like the Kronos myth literally, you know, because it's like you have to kill off these people in order to progress evolution. You know, that's what Hitler thought. He was like,
Yeah.
you know, to perfect the
true.
race, you know, it's like you got to kill off. So it's taking that literally.
Yeah,
You know?
they do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Aurobindo talks about. That's how the mind does. The mind can only categorize something into opposites.
Right.
This is white, this is black. If we get rid of these people, you know, everything will be fine then.
Right.
And they're thinking the same thing. Let's get rid of these guys.
Right. Exactly.
Instead of understanding that we're all a different combination of
Right.
molecules or whatever it is, we're all one.
Yeah.
But you can only do that by going inward and seeing your shadow.
Exactly.
But by looking at projecting outward onto the planets, all these things that you know, that somebody else is causing all this, they would be nothing without people going to the nuclear factories every day and creating napalm and depleted uranium.
Yeah.
I mean, how many people read about this whole concept of some giant conspiracy, which I do, in a sense, I believe it.
Right. Yeah.
I do believe it, but in another sense, it's not going to change unless people refuse
Yeah.
to do what they want us to do,
Exactly.
which is be in fear.
Yeah.
You know, you get up, oh, I'm going to lose my job, so I have to go to my napalm factory.
Right.
I have to go to General Dynamics and work on the cruise missiles. Then I'm going to go home and watch a video and blame Kronos.
Right. Exactly.
No, it's what America's doing, and not just America, everybody. I mean, 130 million people died in the last 100 years. Why are they blaming the Greek myths?
Yeah.
That is just, that's almost paranoid. I
Yeah.
don't know how to explain
because
that.
they're unwilling to
To look at their own
have
shadow.
self-reflection. Exactly.
Yeah, the whole the religions really have missed the boat on that.
Exactly.
they miss the time.
Exactly.
If you see the God and everything, you're going to see, oh, yeah, this is new golden age.
Right.
If you don't, you see, oh, this is the end of the world.
Right.
Everybody's going to die and
Because
go
it's
to hell.
mirroring back at them the state of consciousness that they're at.
That's what all myths do.